Good morning and welcome to another episode of Exploring Cognitive Biases with me, Duncan Price from Mind Affinity. Hi! That was a far more professional introduction than normal. Anyway, how's it going? So this is my series where every week I look at a different cognitive bias. What's a cognitive bias, I hear you ask? Well, probably not, because you've probably already been watching some of these videos. But in case you are wondering, you could always go back and check out my introduction. So if you head to YouTube, search for Mind Affinity and find the playlist of cognitive biases, you'll see the introduction there, which explains what they're all about. A very simple and brief summary is that cognitive biases, and hello to everyone that's watching on the replay and the people that have just started joining me live. Cognitive biases are shortcuts that we take to help us to make decisions, basically. We don't even know that we're doing them. Subconsciously, we use these biases, these techniques that we've learned to take shortcuts, to think about things, to make it easier for us to make decisions and not have to use reason and logic. Because who wants to be slowed down by reason and logic, eh? Problem is, we live in a world and in a culture where we've grown far beyond our original evolution, if you like. And so decision making isn't actually as easy as being irrational and deciding whether we feel good or bad about something. There's a lot more to it than that. So some of these biases kind of get in our way a little bit. So wherever you're watching from, whether it's on the replay or live, just say hello in the comments. Let me know that you're there. Tell me where you're watching from and when. It'd be great to know where you are and when you're catching up on this if you're not watching live. And of course, if you're watching live, say hello. So today we are talking about impact bias. Impact bias is an interesting one. See, it tells me that I've got lots of people watching, but I'm not seeing any comments. So I apologize if you are commenting and I'm just not seeing it. So it's simply put, it is the tendency that we have to overestimate either the duration or intensity of our emotional states. Good morning, Sarah. Thank you for commenting. You're on the school run walking back to the car. Ace. So, well, definitely don't comment to me if you're driving afterwards. Yeah, simple as that. So a study that was done that helped to identify this bias, there were a group of people that went into job interviews. And they were asked beforehand how they thought they would feel about losing the job, about not getting the job if they didn't get it, and how long they thought they would feel that way for, basically. Or they were asked how they think they'd feel immediately and how they'd feel 10 minutes later. And they were split into two groups. One group which was fairly assessed and the other group which was unfairly assessed. I know you're not Sarah, and I know you wouldn't do that. It's a public safety announcement. I feel it's my responsibility. No. Anyway, yeah, so they were then, they had the interview, they came out, and they were all then asked to fill out a question. Yeah, so they were told that they didn't get the job. They filled out a questionnaire when they were told that they didn't get the job about how they were feeling. Unsurprisingly, they felt pretty naff about the fact that they didn't get the job. They were then asked to fill out a very similar questionnaire 10 minutes later, and regardless of whether they were in the fair or unfair group, because that's actually what this study was originally trying to look at, actually they all reported feeling a lot less unhappy 10 minutes later than they expected they would. Now, obviously, that's a very simple example, but we see it in life time and time again. So a great example that we see a lot, and there's other biases at play here to an extent as well, but if I were to ask you how much joy or how long do you think the joy of buying that shiny new TV or that fancy car or that shiny new watch, whatever it might be, how much joy is that going to bring you and how long is that joy going to last for? In that example, the chances are you'll be fairly accurate about how much joy it will bring you, but you'll probably expect that feeling, that elation, and that excitement of that new toy to last a lot longer than it really will. And actually it will fade. So when it comes to making purchases, particularly if you're being impulsive about those purchases, this is one thing to consider, is that you will very easily justify. And what we tend to do with anything is that we make our decisions based on a lot of very quick subconscious processing that we're not even aware of, and then we find ways to justify that decision and rationalize it afterwards to make sense of it, so that we can say, yeah, it makes perfect sense for me to spend a month's pay on something that I can't really afford, that's going to bring me joy for a week, and then I'll kind of forget about. So that's a really good example of it. Another great example of it, and one that is well worth considering and thinking about, and this is where you can really, being aware of this and thinking this through, can really help in some situations if you're holding yourself back from something through fear of how it could turn out. So let's use a really big example for this. Let's imagine a marriage breaking down, and or a serious relationship. You get to the point where you realize that it's really not working, and you've tried all you can and it's just not going to work. But the idea of leaving that person is terrifying. The idea of completely disrupting your life and what you're comfortable with, that is pretty damn scary. But what we tend to do is we think about the negative impact that that's going to have emotionally, and everything we're thinking about in the future, not just next week, not just next month, not just next year, but even 5 years into the future, the tendency is that we're seeing ourselves as life would be without what we have now. But actually, in reality, when you live it, and you're a year down the line or 5 years down the line, you're no longer living your life as someone who's no longer married to that person. You're living your life as the person that you are then. So because you're not really aware of you don't know who you're going to be in the future, right? You only know who you are now and what you've experienced in the past. So as you become that person in the future, your priorities, your focuses, the way you're feeling about things is going to be very different to the way that you feel about things looking forward to that moment. So if there's a big scary thing that you really are holding yourself back from doing because you're worried that that negative element or aspect of it emotionally is going to be huge and going to last forever, realize that it's not going to last forever. And sure, yeah, that doesn't mean there's not still going to be times in the future where you miss elements of that. Absolutely. Potentially, depending very much on the situation and the individuals involved. But it's not going to be as intense as you expect, and it's not going to last for as long as you expect. You'll get to the point where you're no longer the person who made that hard decision and did that thing, or left that situation, or whatever it might be. You'll become the person who's doing what you're doing now, and that's something that happened in the past, if that makes sense. So in essence, as with all biases, the best way to overcome it is be aware of it. Recognize that if you're holding yourself back from something, if you're worried about the negative impact of something, if you're worried about the emotional impact that something will have and how long that's going to last for, it's better to rip that bandage off. It's better to just rip it off, take that step, because then it's harder to go back, and you've pushed yourself forward into something new. You'll be surprised how quickly you become excited about the new opportunities, rather than struggling with what you've decided to leave behind. So that's impact bias. It's a very simple one, really. It's part of a whole group of biases, which I will be working through and talking about anyway in a bit more detail. But yeah, impact bias, the tendency that we have to overestimate the length or intensity of emotional responses to situations we find ourselves in, basically. Cool. thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm off now to go and join Grow Live. So if you are watching this live, and if you're watching on the replay, you're not too late, because you could still catch this on the replay. So there is a 2-day business and personal development event. Oh, thanks, James. Thanks for coming on. A 2-day business and personal development event with way over 20 expert speakers. There's talks, there's workshops, there's question and answer sessions, and there's fireside interviews. So loads of different stuff going on over the next 2 days. It's not too late to join live. It officially has already started, but it's just the intro until 9:30, and then the first speaker's on, which is an interview with Jay Unwin, I think. Very exciting. Anyway, yeah, it's not too late to get a ticket. I will post the link below. But yeah, you can also watch it all back on the replay, so you can buy a ticket if you like to watch it back, even if you can't be there to attend live. There's a special code that you can use. So if you use, if you use the code GUEST, ta-da, there's the code. That really wasn't worth it. You can remember the word guest. Anyway, if you use the code GUEST, then you can get a special discount. So can I put it in the comments here? Depending on what platform you're watching on, you should now see in the comments a link to book on if you're interested. So give it a click and head over there to find out more. I've been Duncan Price from Mind Affinity. This has been my video on cognitive biases. Tune in next week for another one where we will explore a new bias. And of course, if there's any questions you've got about the way we think, the way we make decisions, why we do the things that we do, I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch, and who knows, you may even inspire a whole new series of videos if you ask the right question. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great day, everyone. You're awesome. Go out there, connect with your awesomeness, and go be who you were born to be. Was that cheesy enough? Have a great day.